Hi, guys. It's Dr. Belinda George, and it is Tuesday, time for Tucked In Tuesdays. Those of you that are familiar with the platform, go ahead and put where you're from. If you're a regular, or if you're not a regular, you can go ahead and put where you're from. I am getting my personal page set up so that I can see the comments of those of you that are joining. Hi, Rolanda and Riley. Hello. And so, Rolanda, my niece, is saying hello, and my great nephew is there. And I have a book tonight, and it's called Stone Upon Stone. In the end, it's a love story. As you all know, I don't read the books until the night of, so this is just as exciting for me as it is for you. But I have a very special surprise. I have the author there. So let me add Brian. Hello, Brian. How are
Hi,
you?
how are you? Hi, guys.
Good. So good evening, Ava, Ari, and Pop Pop. Hello. And Mike. Hello, Dr. George. I'm watching The Amazing Race Canada, learning about Canada while you are reading your book. Oh, my goodness. Well, you might have to stop it for a little bit, Mike, because you know I'm going to ask you things about the books, and you're my fact checker person. So, Stone Upon Stone, in the end, is a love story written and illustrated by you, Mr. Brian Todd Barnette, correct?
Yes.
And Bits and Pieces Production. So tell me what inspired you to write this book.
The original inspiration was an actual disagreement slash argument slash like breakup of a friendship. It wasn't a romantic relationship. It's a breakup of a friendship, and in figuring out like what had happened and why things suddenly were different, I realized that most of the problem had been around the way that we communicated. And I was trying to actually just get the feelings out for myself. I wasn't writing them a letter or writing it for them. I was writing it for me. But I just sat down and said, what does this feel like? And the entire kind of story just kind of, I say it downloaded into my head. This is way before like I had even a computer. So I wrote it out in longhand and just it just kind of flowed out of me. So it was just really based upon the way that a friendship kind of transitioned, ended at the time.
Love it. And miscommunication is the biggest cause of a lot of breakups and relationships, friendships, even family matters.
Oh,
So, important book. So, I'm looking. So, tell me, when did you write this book and how long did it take you to write it?
uh, originally wrote it in actual 1995, and it took me all of, and I'm just saying this, it took me all of like 20 minutes to write it. It just, well, I mean, it's changed a little bit. I finessed it somewhat, but the basic story, the core of the story, just all came so quickly. I used to write poetry a lot, and I would write letters to myself, or I'd write things out, and this just came out. So I wrote it in about 20 to 30 minutes, and I illustrated it later because I just kept rereading and thinking, this is interesting, and I wanted to see what kind of visuals might go along with it. And at the time, I didn't think about publishing it as a book, but I kind of wanted to see it set out in story form. So I added the illustrations myself later as a storyboard in a way.
Absolutely love it. And I was 18 at the time, and I probably could have benefited from this book.
I think I was, well, I was in my mid 20s, I guess, late 20s, mid 20s.
Mid 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to start reading the book,
Hmm.
and then I'm going to ask you some other questions.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and start. And this is my first time reading this. So sometimes my pages are sticky. So, Stone Upon Stone, in the end, it's a love story. Once two souls met while walking their paths in life. So we have, and if you want to hold up the pages, Brian, so they can
Hmm.
see the illustrations while I read, that is
Hmm.
perfect. So
Okay.
I'll start over. Once two souls met while walking their paths in life. And since paths in life are seldom straight or fixed, they decided to walk together for a time. Neither one knew how long their paths would parallel, but it wasn't important for either one to think of the future in a definite or probable sense. So together, they walked. They shared quite a bit in their time together. They found many things to laugh about together and sometimes even cry about together. It was very good together. The sun always rose on the same side and set on the same side. I'm reading a little fast.
Gotcha. Good. I gotcha.
There were not always flowers, but they learned that flowers come and flowers go. And it is best to enjoy flowers while and when they bloom. To be sure, they were to become quite acquainted with one another. Sometimes they even thought it was best not to talk with one another. On clear nights in spring, they would walk their shared paths, look into the sky, and imagine the things that must lay ahead. Believing in their separate hearts, together they would create these things, and they hoped deep inside their separate souls that the other was believing in the same things. Once or twice, or perhaps it was slightly more often, there were times when the path was a little too crowded, with two complete lives sharing what seemed like such a narrow space. When this occurred, they would step away from each other, each to their own side. Fortunately, life has its own pull, and soon they were walking step in step and side by side again. Of course, the world could not pull them apart when there was no room to work between them, and they didn't get so far apart that they couldn't reach out and pull the other closer. It was by silent and separate admission, the safest they had felt for a while. On one particularly bright day, one looked down and noticed that somewhere along the walk, the other had begun to lay down stones. These stones seemed of no real significance, yet their existence was puzzling. But for a while, the stones were basically forgotten, or at least they were not mentioned. Many flowers and many clear spring nights later, the first noticed that the stones were still being laid down by the other, stone upon stone, just following the journey, perhaps even marking it in a way. Hi, Robin. But now the first could no longer ignore their existence. The strange thing was, maybe they should still be talked about. The only thing the first could think to do was lay down some stones also. And so it went, stone upon stone. Then it happened. The stones were openly acknowledged by the pair. What are you doing? Asked the second. What do you mean, what am I doing? Countered the first. I'm laying down some of these stones the same as you have been. But why are you laying down stones like mine? Asked the second. Look, the first defended, I need stones also. You shouldn't be the only one who is allowed to lay down stones. Of course, as happens when two people have begun laying stone upon stone without having discussed why, the issue became the right and privilege to put stone upon stone, not justification or necessity. That began the real separation, stone upon stone. Each had decided that it was in their own best interest to have stones themselves to lay. So they did. They were still working together and sharing many things, but neither one stopped laying the stones. They didn't mention the stones again, yet, when one thought the other was laying down more, they silently and separately doubled their efforts. Now, as one would expect, they were losing sight of each other and could only see the wall they had helped to create. Soon enough, they were walking different paths. Remember, paths in life are seldom straight or fixed. As the days numbered, each thought they could see the other somewhere close by. But the effort of laying stones had blurred their vision, and all that seemed certain was the laying of the stones, stone upon stone. But the necessity to lay stones by oneself isn't as strong, so soon they each silently and separately ceased their efforts. By this time, they were on different paths and again going in different directions. As time would have it, sometimes later in their lives, they happened again upon this wall. Which side they were on now would be anyone's guess, for as stated, paths in life are seldom straight or fixed. As they looked closer, each noticed in the mortar set in the wall, stone upon stone, there was something written. And what they read made them weep as only children know how. There written between each stone were these words: But I love you. And there's a note. It says sometimes when a friend reads the story, they will say, wait, it can't end like that. That's I must be that friend. And they are right. It really isn't the end, it's a beginning. We all have been on each side of a wall, but it is never too late to recognize this and do what we can to rectify our circumstances. Very often, the undoing of a wall may also be a slow process, stone by stone. But with love and understanding and yielding to the divinity in ourselves, the wall can simply be ob- obliterated. I got caught up. The stones in our own lives can be almost anything that prevents open communication. If we argue, blame, judge, lie, hold resentments, or even withhold our own truth so as not to hurt someone else's feelings, we create obstacles to the experience of the relationship. Sometimes it's not about being right or wrong, but just realizing that we would do things differently. Also, it doesn't mean that two people are necessarily meant to be in each other's lives in any particular way, but it still benefits us to honor ourselves and each other in the time we spend together. This is true of all relationships between family, romantic partners, friends, or coworkers. Hi, Deetra. Don't wait. Take a moment and forgive yourself. Be gentle and realize that the desire to love and be loved is inherent in us all. Allow people to come back to you with love and allow yourself enough love to ask forgiveness of others. May your relationships be paths and bridges, not walls. Namaste. I just want you to know, and then there's a dedication page, and he has some acknowledgments in the back and his signature. So, Brian,
Yes.
what a beautiful book and a much needed book. And I think this was more of an honor for me to read at such a time in our lives when the world is so divisive and children don't quite understand that it's divisive. And this is a really easy way to teach them how quickly you can be separated from those you love. So I want to say hello to the Myers family and hi, Cindy and Gloria. So Brian, tell me your favorite part of the book, and you told me what inspired you to write the book. But what is your favorite part of this book?
I think it's really it's the beginning where you realize that that people have that hope on almost any relationship, that when you meet friends or you have a romantic interest in somebody, or even when you're close to family and you have time spent together, it's that when you're creating the good memories, you kind of do hope that everyone's kind of believing in the same things. um, uh, you share, like I said, they spent many spring nights, and there are many flowers and many clear nights in spring together, and that's just it. Is that we benefit from having all the times that we spend together, and sometimes not really having an awareness of the significance of it, um, because it's almost like the good times are almost expected in a way, and then the the times when we have strife or when we argue or we have difficulty, it seems like that we give suddenly so much importance to, that we don't sometimes realize that it's part of it. Sometimes the disagreements are part of it, but then when we give so much importance, so much weight to the fact that we think the other person did something wrong, and we're not willing to discuss or listen or understand or forgive, then it's just it's so detrimental, and it's so dangerous to not only that relationship maybe, but then how we then start to perceive other people and other relationships, and how if we don't heal and clear our past relationships, a lot of times we carry that mess forward with us into the next relationship, and we start to judge people based upon our old experiences, and that's not fair either. So, but my
Well,
favorite part is really having the understanding that that hope and that feeling that we have when relationships are going well, is that really to let that sink in and let that become really, really part of us, because that's what could fuel you through the difficult times, if that makes
I
sense.
love it. And Mr. Pancho Hill, who's a faithful watcher, said this is more than a children's book. And it is. For one thing, Brian, vocabulary, kids aren't exposed to vocabulary like they aren't. And you got an amen corner. Mr. Pancho also said, preach.
Mhm.
And so kids aren't exposed to vocabulary because we consider kids to be these little tiny humans, but they have gone through things in their lives that we didn't experience until we were adults. And I think bringing this to the forefront and parents, Rolanda's watching with her son, sitting and saying, Mommy, what does that word mean? And having those crucial conversations. And I want to say hello to Cindy, Gloria, Bambi, and Chantel. Brian, I will tell you the part of my book, the part of your book that made I almost teared up. And it was the page that said, what are you doing? Asked the second. What do you mean, what am I doing? Countered the first. I'm only laying down some of these stones, the same as you have been. And so many times, my husband, Melvin, and I will get upset with one another, right? And I will initiate why I'm upset, and he'll tell me, well, I wasn't saying anything because you didn't say anything. And if we didn't have a healthy relationship, the miscommunication would stop there. If someone wasn't willing to bend and say, well, why are you doing it? So that part of the book made me so many times hurt people.
Right,
And
exactly.
you continue on as if nothing happened. And we don't, and we build stones. We don't have physical stones, but we have mental stones
And they're heavy,
that,
and that, yeah.
and we put up and we divide ourselves based on political beliefs, Christian beliefs or non-Christian beliefs or gender beliefs, or just because, I don't know, they don't want to see someone's other side. There's no right. I don't think there's any way there's no right way to do anything. I think God has put us in a place where he says, you know what, I'm going to give you right and right or wrong and wrong. And it's left up to you all to work together. It's not that anyone is worse than the other. It's we just don't want to hear the other's point of view. And I love how before there was any problem, just like in the Bible, everything was great, Brian, in this book. I let him in. He can come
Yeah,
in.
that's Dusty. She's one of my
Hi,
little.
Dusty.
I've got two
Brian,
dogs and two cats.
I have to tell you, when I was a little girl, our first pet was named Dusty.
Oh wow,
And so let Dusty in. Dusty's a sweet part of my. Hi, Dusty.
she is. She's very sweet.
Hi, Dusty. How are you? She just wants kisses. She's
She
like,
does.
she just wants
Now,
kisses.
I want to honor exactly what the gentleman said about it not it being more than a children's book, and I acknowledge that on the back. I'm like, it's while it's not a children's book in and of itself, but then, like you said, I tend when I talk to my nieces or my nephews or even kids, I tend not to ever use like baby voices or talk down to them, um, and of course, I mean, their vocabulary is strange. Sometimes people have or do not have access or exposure to a lot of words, and I appreciate that. But I always feel like too, like I would not. I don't have children of my own, but whenever I would give books to my nieces or nephews, a lot of times when they were very young, I'd want to read to them, because if any word came up that they didn't understand, or if any situation in a book came up they didn't understand, I don't want them on their own to feel like they are either without an explanation or they have to come out somehow just like figure it out. A lot of things you will get in context, but when it comes to reading and when it comes to sharing that kind of time with kids, I definitely like to feel like it's communal, and it's something that I like, that I would share with my nieces and nephews, is actually reading to them. And I think there's a lot of value in that, because it honors their experience, but then it also sometimes it will prompt maybe learning or questions, etc. And and because it's so heavy of an actual overall message, some younger kids, they might not get the entirety of it. But I think that when you start to realize, like you said, when you're describing situation, I remember from when I was younger, I have two brothers and a sister, and it was always like, well, he started it or she started it. It's like you forget, you think that's what started it, but yet that person's reaction or action may have been because of something you did or didn't do, or something you did or didn't say. So who knows who started it? It's just a matter of, that's the way we defend. We defend by not wanting to sometimes accept our responsibility when there are challenges. And I think part of growth is realizing that, like you said, like there's no absolute right or absolute wrong sometimes in these situations. It's a matter of how much responsibility can we each take in realizing that it's gone off track, and how much responsibility can we each take in making it right, even if it's now different, and still making it right, and saying I'm sorry.
Absolutely love it. And Mr. Pancho, he has three little ones sitting there, and I'm pretty sure he's really good about getting these books. So tell them where they can purchase the book.
Well, you can give them my email address if somebody to order it direct from me, but it's Amazon will have it, Barnes and Noble will have it. Uh, but if anybody wants to order it directly from me, just you can give them my email. They can send me, and that way, if somebody, I mean, I'm not big on like autographing. I don't. That's not the thing. But if they want something personalized, just let me know. But I mean, but you can definitely order it through Amazon and through Barnes and Noble and any major bookstore, because it's got an ISBN. I mean, it's on there. Bits and Pieces Media is actually the company I started because I published it myself. But uh, but again, it's available any bookseller.
And I did go ahead and put that email address up so they can click on that link and
Mm-hmm.
order that book. So I see that you have some QR codes, which tell me about those QR codes and what they mean.
Well, one of them, the QR code took, well, I'm hoping that it's still active. I have to check my website. One of them takes you to my personal blog, which again, there are essays and stories in there. Some of them are a little deep. They're not, I wouldn't say kid, there's nothing that's going to be, adult only in nature. But again, some of the subject matter could be kind of deep. And then I had a program called Get in the Car and Go, that's on a Facebook page. And that just, I want people to share places they've gone, things they've done, and interesting places they want to go. And then the other one is just to Bits and Pieces, which again was my media company. I actually produced a CD for a young young pianist some time ago. His music's out there. His music's on Apple iTunes or Apple, I think it's called Apple Music now. But his music's out there. He's a blind musician. He was blind since birth, but just beautiful, beautiful composer. His name is Michael Macias. And I'm happy to have worked with him and to have met him. He's also very inspirational to me. And then I've got two other books. I do have a children's book, again, a little heavy on the vocabulary sometimes, but it's called The Best Gift. And let's see if I can show you the cover of that one. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes.
Okay.
I have that book.
Do you really?
I think you sent me that book.
Oh, okay. Well, that one's the one that was geared towards younger people. I mean, the story in it is about a young prince and what, for his birthday, it's not about selfishness, but it's about being aware of the idea of giving and getting, and how the blessings are in both. And I had another book where I wrote two screenplays that got produced into shorts. And so my second book that I published, but my third book I'm talking about, is called Two of More. And that one is definitely mature subject matter. It deals with some heavy issues. But those are my three books right now. And I told you I am working on some others. A young adult trilogy called Overlooked Magic and Ordinary Families. And then a book of exercises that people can do to increase their sense of mindfulness and being in the now. It's called Do List. So I'm working on that too.
I love it. And Paris keeps putting, hi, Paris. How are you? Paris is a little one that grew up. We used to say all the time, can I pet that dog? And you just happen to have Dusty. So she doesn't say it anymore, but we used to say that on Tucked in Tuesdays all the time.
Paris is a
So
beautiful name.
I, well, I'm sure she'll type in thank you shortly. I love this. And on the back, Pancho, it says, wow, not a children's book. So a good catch on that, uh, Pancho. This is wonderfully written. And on the last sentence in the back of the book, it said, all is love. And that's so true. Guys, you know, I'm going to ask you like I do. Go ahead and support the authors and their illustrators. Order it from them if you can, because buying locally helps. And so, thank you so much. But the biggest takeaway from your book, what would you say is your biggest takeaway before we go?
Well, I if somebody's going to buy it, I hope they actually buy it because it makes them think of somebody. It makes them think of somebody with whom they may have had a falling out, and they realize that while the relationship may never go back to being like it was, but you know, there's a time when you can say, "I'm sorry that this is the way it happened, and I just want you to know that you know, either I love you still, or I think of you, or that I'm sorry for the part that I played that caused any hurt." So sometimes I think about the book like a big card, like a big Hallmark card. Like, if it makes you think of somebody, reach out to them on some level. Reach out to them, and if they're not here anymore, if they happen to have passed, you can still, you know, say a prayer or reach out to them through prayer and meditation that just says that you want to remember the love that was there, because that's the part that was real. And that's why I say all is love, is that's the part that's real.
Love that. Well, I'm going to tell you my biggest takeaway from this book is sometimes and in the beginning, sometimes we just follow suit and we don't find ourselves. And sometimes we are separated from people to find ourselves and make conversations happy. But I will tell you that most importantly, when that happens, Miss Carmelita Harris Daniels, she said, or write them a letter.
Exactly.
This, my biggest takeaway, I would have to say, is don't ever let anything just end. There's no end to anything. And that is my biggest takeaway. And I love how your book didn't end like the end. Um, and you have Mr. Pancho crying. He said, you've got me thinking through my tears. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people um, is thinking of someone that they wish they would have mended a relationship, or right now they're thinking, I need to do something. And I think it's today. Everything happens to a reason. And if you're on this live and you're hearing that, today is your day to reach out to that person where a relationship was severed. And Amy says, love your book and
Ah,
you.
Amy is somebody that one of the people I admire most in my life. Just a lovely lady, and a great like teacher herself in a way.
Absolutely. This is wonderfully written. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to order a copy and give it to someone, because sometimes you can't find the words to say I'm sorry, but that person knows how I feel. And I believe that if they got this book, they would know without me saying anything that I'm still there. Our relationship is still good. Um, and I'm sorry, even if it was a two-sided relationship. So I will purchase another book and send it to someone. Um, Beautifully written, and they can get it from Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. I put the website in there. You can purchase it through any of those. And I always leave them with these parting words. If nobody else tells you, Dr. George loves you. Do you have any parting words for them, Brian?
This is, again, like I said at the beginning, this is just quite an honor. The story was a catharsis for me. It helped me change and heal. So being able to share it is still just a huge blessing. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. So, guys, next Tuesday we have My Life as Jill Jill. She's a author right here in Beaumont, and Her name is Jillian Marshall. So she's next Tuesday. So if you know Jillian, she's a self-published author and she wrote the book herself. So she's just like you. And you've encouraged a lot of people, including myself. I'm going to keep this by my bedside. And whenever my husband upsets me, I'm going to say, read this page. You can know how I feel. And Mac Vieira put some stars and hearts there. And Carmelita said, love you more, Doc. I love you too, my love. And so, Brian, we're going to go ahead and end, but thank you so much. Keep sharing this book. The message is, the blessing is greater than the message that this book will give you. And so it's a great read. So thank you for sharing that with all of us. This is something all of us can relate to.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it. Have a great night.
Okay, and if you just hang on 1 second, Brian. Good night, guys. I'll see you next Tuesday.